Appreciate the patience. Oh, as we work through getting everyone on, I see here a little feedback. I think we're good now. Yeah, just give us one more minute. I think we're getting the crew assembled and the team, and we will kick this very exciting spaces off. See, we got Jessica, Danica, Chun, John. June, are you guys all going to call in individually, or will we have the crews together? All right. June, can you hear me?
That's good.
Excellent. And are you with the remainder of the crew?
No, we are in separate group.
Okay. All right. Well, then we'll just give it one more minute while we get the rest of the folks on, and then we will start. Once again, I apologies for the delays, but it shall be worth the wait.
Kiko, I'll do a comm check with you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Amazing. John,
Great.
can you do the same?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
All right. Yes, I can. Can we do the rest for the remainder of the crew? Rabea, Zenica, and Eric, can you guys hear me?
Hey, Yannick here, got you loud and clear.
Thank you. Got you loud and clear. For me?
I do got you. Yes. I think Rabea is the last one I'm waiting for.
Same with logging back in again.
Okay. Why don't we? I tell you what. We'll go ahead and get started, and I'm sure we'll get her online by the time we get there, which is awesome. So, welcome everyone. This is super exciting. Nothing gets the heart pumping like a good human spaceflight mission, especially one where we do things that we've never done before. Um, so, my name is Kiko Donchev. I think some of you guys know me, but I'm the vice president of launch here at SpaceX. I oversee all of our activities in Florida, Vandenberg, and our space operations department. Um, we're here today to talk about Fram, the first ever human spaceflight mission over the poles. There are so many exciting and new things about this mission. It's meant to inspire a lot of people, and it's really meant to hit on the thing that we're meant to do here at SpaceX, which is explore. Quick status on the vehicle. Dragon and Falcon 9 are healthy. We actually just rolled the rocket and the spacecraft out to the pad. They're going to go vertical tonight. We're going to go get ready to do a dress rehearsal called dry dress, which we do on or we do on all crew missions, along with we're going to static fire the integrated vehicle between Dragon and Falcon 9. Um, weather looks good this weekend. There's a little bit of a front moving through. We'll see what the launch site looks like on Sunday, but nothing's going to threaten our rehearsal activities this weekend. And then, if all goes well, we'll get ready for a launch opportunity on Monday. Now, this mission is a little more challenging than even a normal crew mission when it comes to launch availability because it is a free fire and we are not going to space station. We not only have to worry about weather at the launch site, weather on the ascent track, but we also have to go ahead and predict the weather in the recovery zone. Many of you probably remember Polaris Dawn. When we flew that mission back in September, we had we ended up staying on the pad for quite a few days because while we had good launch weather, we couldn't kind of predict, or we couldn't see a good window on the recovery side, right? So we have to effectively have certainty that we're going to have good weather on the return side, which when you integrate the launch site weather, the ascent track weather, and the recovery weather, sometimes you don't get as much availability. So while we're hopeful we could fly on Monday, it is possible we'll need to wait a couple days on the pad, and we're prepared to do that. And then really, last but not least, I'm very excited. I know the team is very excited, and I certainly know the crew is very excited to fly this mission, but we will not fly until we are ready. Safety is our top priority at SpaceX, and we're only going to do it when it's time to go, and everyone on the team has that confidence. We like to say this at the company: every single person has stop work authority, and every single person has the ability to halt the launch if there's any concern. Um, our priority is not only sending this crew to orbit, but getting them home safely to their families, and we're going to ensure that's the case, even if we have to stand down and wait and go fix something. So, with no further ado, Chun, it'd be great, as your role as the commander, to provide a high-level overview of Fram2. What you guys want to achieve, and kind of the impetus and how you brought this crew together, and how you dreamed this whole thing up.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Chun, Fram2 Mission Commander. I'm free to be here with you on X-Space and share you about the mission and journey that led to us here. And on the evening of April 23rd, 2023, I was in Saudi Arabia, laying down in my hotel bed, thinking about the perfect name of the world's first spaceflight mission to orbit a pole. So naturally, one of the first names came in mind is Polaris, the North Star. But unfortunately, Jared Exelman already patented the name for his mission. So then I recall 20 years ago, I was quite active, follow all the different space missions, starting from a Cassini Spirit Opportunity. And there was a small Mars probe called Beagle 2 from British. Uh, I had spent a lot of time following that mission. Unfortunately, it was failed. But it reminded me that maybe I can name my mission a similar way like Beagle 2. So the ship carried Charles Darwin around the world in 1830s. So uh, that hit me. So I immediately thought of from the Norwegian ship brought us to both the North Pole and South Poles. So I felt right and excited. I immediately posted a tweet, mark that moment. So Fram2 is named after the Norwegian exploration ship, which carried the pioneers Nansen, Amundsen, and many others into the harshest environments on the Earth. So in the same spirit, mission will orbit through the polar regions of space, parseless traveled and rich in scientific, symbolic meaning. My own journey has been shaped by lifelong curiosity and a fascination with pushing boundaries. As a kid, I used to stare at the blank white space at the bottom of a world map, wonder what was out there. And curiosity eventually took me across the continent and to the southernmost tip of the Earth in 2021, and also the North Pole in 2023, and now soon into space. So the mission is both personal and purposeful. Fram2 isn't just about going to space, it's about pushing boundaries, sharing knowledge, and having inspired by Dear Moon and Jerry Eisenman's previous missions. And we hope our mission will further inspire later people do the same. Uh, I think I'll hand over the mic to Kiko.
I mean, that's, man, I just You got me super excited, June. I'm not gonna lie. Listen, I don't, we've obviously met a couple times and have talked through the mission, but it's a great summary. And I think it's great we're doing this to help bring some more awareness to what's coming because it really is groundbreaking, and it's super cool to hear the story of where this whole thing started, where your inspiration started. I love when someone has a vision and then is able to turn that vision into reality. That just shows people like if you dream, you can make it happen. You can make anything happen. So maybe now we sag over to Yannicka and to kind of discuss your role as vehicle commander, what you hope to achieve filming the Earth from the poles, and maybe what you're most excited about and how your experience has been.
Thank you, Go. Yeah, so absolutely honored to be the vehicle commander. We have a untraditional mission, so we're not your typical NASA astronauts. We are a private space mission, therefore we have our mission commander and then me as a vehicle commander who is responsible for dynamic phases. And dynamic phases are launch and splashdown. So what I'm mostly excited about, other than being the vehicle commander, is of course the cinematography. I'm a trained cinematographer with a master's from the National Film and Television School in the UK. And I've specialized in innovating film production, and I'm looking forward to being the first human in history to be able to point my camera at the North Pole and South Pole from space. Let me know if you have any questions, Arkiko.
Yeah, like maybe just on that note, like what's your any strategy on how you're gonna work the camera? Like any specific shot? Like is it more just, kind of the watching the rise of the poles, or, is there like a specific moment that you're like, oh, I gotta capture this?
There will be a lot of specific moments. Specifically, we are focusing on the aurora. This is also a mission where people on the ground on planet Earth can attend, and we have reached out to 2.2 million auroral citizen scientists. And these are people who, and anyone can join, where you go outside if there is aurora where you live, and you note where you live, and you register on the Solar Max mission website, and you will take a photo of the aurora at the same time as we in Fram2 fly over the aurora. And also local observatories are also activating their instruments so that we get this incredible data bank during our mission of the aurora from Earth and from space at the same time, so we can understand what the phenomena can bring to humankind and specifically to satellite technology.
Man, super cool. Not gonna lie, I'm pretty jealous. You're gonna see the aurora from space, over both poles.
Yeah,
You'll have to channel that for all of us.
yeah, not only that, but man, being a cinematographer in space is not easy. It is not like filming on planet Earth, and it's quite comparable to being a cinematographer in the North Pole region, where it is exceptionally hazardous to work. Battery life is extremely hard to maintain when you work in the cold in the polar regions. And now we actually have a limit for how much battery power we can safely bring with us in Dragon. I've been comparing Dragon like going on a ski expedition where you have your skis and you have your sled behind you. And my sled is filled with camera equipment, but in that sled, we also have food, water, and oxygen. And this is what we packed into Dragon. And this is the reason why Dragon is a comparatively short mission of 3.5 days to 5.5 days versus a month to a year on board the ISS.
Amazing. That's a great analogy. I never thought about it like the vehicle like a sled, but we put a lot of time and energy into this sled. I can promise you, and we're excited to have you put it to work.
Absolutely.
Um,
And uh, you can't go into space and sort of test things. So we are spent the past year testing by building a mock-up of Dragon and then creating virtual cameras and virtual lenses so that I can pre-shoot everything before I go into space and know that it works, and have also a collaboration with NASA astronaut Don Pettit on board the ISS right now, who's been testing out a few camera settings for me and verifying that the hypothesis is correct.
Wow. Well, I know there are a lot of space photographers on this spaces right now. I can see some of them in my purview, and I know that they are very excited and jealous also of that. Anything else to add at this moment?
I'm just really honored that I am not a STEM educated person. I have a master's in cinematography, even though it's a very technical subject, it's still considered art. And I'm honored to represent the non-STEM educated in space and flying my film camera. And I am so proud to be able to be the first educated cinematographer in space, and I'm stepping up to the challenge.
I'm sure you're going to live up to it. Exciting, exciting, exciting. Okay, Rebea, we would love to hear about your role as a vehicle pilot and, maybe more specifically, some of the research you've been helping to spearhead, maybe what you hope to learn from it. Just go over any of those activities, and also anything you'd like to share. Well, can't hear you, but as soon as you give it if you can give me a comm check when you're ready.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
Perfect. Did you
awesome.
hear my Did you hear my
Yeah,
question?
I already
Okay,
did my
amazing.
introduction to nothingness. Here we go again then. Hi everyone, I'm super excited to be here today. My name is Rabia. My background is in research, actually, and in Arctic robotics in particular. So I give brains to boats in the Arctic so that they hopefully don't crush us. So that is my training. I'm originally from Berlin in Germany, best city ever. I am totally not biased, I swear. And yeah, so on this mission, I'm the pilot. Together with Janneke, I'll be sitting behind the displays and also responsible for conducting or collecting all the data for the brilliant researchers that we have on the ground um, in orbit. So I'm so hyped for that. Yeah, so maybe talking a little bit about the role as a pilot. I think the really cool thing, especially as a roboticist, I'm so hyped about Dragon being an autonomous vehicle, which really I think shows you how much times are changing in the space sector. We are really at a crucial point in time where the spacecraft does so many of the tasks itself. I think that really spearheads the accessibility to space, right? Because the dream is that in the future everyone can go to space without too much training, so that we have as many people in space if we want to live and work there as a civilization eventually. So that I think is the coolest part, and that's I hope what everyone takes away from it. And yeah, the research we have over 22 experiments, apart from the one that Janneke already mentioned, which is really like an experiment that everyone can join. We also have so these 20 experiments really deal with two questions, I would say. One is, how does the human adapt to extreme environments, right? In our case, that is space, but we have a lot of studies that are looking at comparing also space to other extreme environments. That could be the polar environments, which we're all very familiar with, or that could be even COVID as an extreme isolation environment, right? And the goal is to learn how we can best operate. Like, how can we improve the performance as humans in these environments? And the second question really is also about the accessibility, because right now I think the stereotype of an astronaut is that you have to be this superhuman, medically perfect. But we should really flip this question and be like, okay, how do we design living and working in space for everyone, right? And just to give some examples, I know that Eric can also probably talk a little bit about his favorite research experiments afterwards. We have, for example, like a portable gym, I would say, that we're taking with us, which is um, we look at a portable exercise device in combination with something called blood flow restriction. Sounds scary, but it really just means that it's a certain technique to increase the effectiveness of how you exercise in space and how you can do that portably, right? Because on the ISS there's like very big um, exercise devices, and if we can figure out a way how to do that in the space of Dragon, it's the first time that an exercise device is flown in such a tight space, then it's pretty much done for any spacecraft, right? So that's very exciting. We also have research looking into team dynamics. So what is the perfect team for any extreme environment? I'm really interested in that as well, because what are if you think about long duration spaceflight missions, you really want a team that gels well together. And I think it's also an often overlooked topic, really. Okay, I can talk about this further, so I'll put a full stop here. Yeah, and hand it over to Eric.
Maybe back to
Sound
Kiko first.
No, I think Eric, just take it from here. That sounds good to me.
Great. Well, I will. Yes, my name's Eric. My role is mission specialist and medic on board. And just as a good segue on from Rabia's discussion about some of the research topics, there are a few that I'm particularly interested in when we consider that long duration space flight, missions to Mars and perhaps beyond. We need to really consider a couple of important things, those being nutrition and health. So on the nutrition side of things, we're actually going to be growing mushrooms in space for the first time ever, I believe. Those mushrooms, it's kind of in a substrate, and so they will be partially grown once we fly up there, and we just observe and have a look at how it's growing. We won't have the opportunity to harvest them. That's about a 10-day duration. Of course, we're up there between 3.5 to 5 days or so. But we will monitor and see how they grow and return those mushrooms down for the researchers to check
I
out.
I have to ask Eric, what kind of mushrooms, and are
Yeah,
you going
well,
to eat them?
it's not the ones you're thinking. They're oyster mushrooms, and they're very
I was
nutritious.
thinking I was thinking oyster. I mean, actually, I might have guessed them, but
Uh, yeah,
yeah.
and look, they are a common mushroom, highly nutritious, very sustaining, and you could imagine that on long duration space missions, this is really important, considering that a return trip to Mars is going to be over a year, and those first missions, they're not going to be able to probably pick up food when they get to Mars. So growing stuff on board is a really important thing. The other consideration is health, and we are taking the first X-rays in space. We know that the astronauts up on the ISS, they do suffer from bone density loss and from muscle wasting, and that's one of the reasons why they spend a couple of hours every day on the treadmills up there. So bone injuries could be an issue, certainly for long duration flights. So we will be taking an X-ray into space and taking X-rays of our hands, chests, and pelvis.
That's it's great research, and I mean, it's so exciting to see us run these sort of experiments. Eric, you've explored both poles, right? This is kind of a new environment for you. Maybe just talk me through. You go through a lot of prep, right, in terms of how you train to go on an expedition. Let's maybe talk about how that compares to how you've prepared for spaceflight,
Yeah,
and some of the differences, comparisons, and then given someone like yourself that's been to many different places around the world and around this globe, like what excites you the most about this trip to orbit?
yeah, sure. This is it's an incredible opportunity for me. I mean, given that we are completing the first human orbits over the north and south poles, These are places that I've visited around 30 times, and most of those visits are ski expeditions to or from the North and South Poles. Incredibly hostile environment. So, of course, we do some very stringent preparations. We need to have all of our food in order, our stove fuel, of course. Without those two things, we can't survive. We need to collect snow and melt that snow over the stove to hydrate ourselves. We have these super lightweight tents that protect us from the environment outside. And this is a really pertinent thing. So often we have these incredible blizzards that blow up on the Antarctic plateau or on the frozen ocean of the Arctic Ocean, the frozen sea ice. And we could be bound up in these tents for 3, 4, 5 days or so and not have the opportunity to step outside. Everything that we need for survival must be inside that tent. Now, what a perfect comparison to us being inside Dragon as we orbit around the North and South poles for 3 to 5 days. It's that kind of same blizzard experience. We've got 4 people locked inside this shell, outside an incredibly harsh environment, and it's one of the reasons why we have spent so much time as a team together. We've been doing a lot of training, obviously at Hawthorne. We've been doing simulations ad nauseum, which helps us to respond both as individuals in our roles, but also as a team. We've been to the fjords of Prince William Sound sea kayaking, where we were doing our extreme environment training, and this has helped shape us as a team, so that in the event of responding to off-nominal situations, emergencies, we have the capacity to do this. And this is why we've been training now for the best part of a year.
Some people may think like compare a spacecraft with an aircraft, flying in Dragons like flying an airplane. But after this few months of training, we have different feeling. Uh, from my perspective, I think living in Dragon is more like camping in the wild.
It really
So
is.
Eric is the expert in this area.
Yeah, and another comparison actually, and this is something that the trainers at Hawthorne encouraged me to think about. Not so much about the pure technicalities of spaceflight, but given that I'm often the lead in emergency scenarios where we need to respond to things like fire, depressurization, emergency deorbit, which of course we expect not to happen, but we train for them. They encouraged me to look at the comparisons between Fram2 mission and being in Dragon up there and the kind of situations that I've been in, not only on polar expeditions, but I've done some ocean crossings on board on board sailing boats as well. And in many ways, it's very similar to preparing a sailing boat for an extreme storm event. What do you do on board? Well, there's a number of things you need to do, similar to what would need to do as we prepare for deorbit and splashdown. We need to secure everything on board because everything becomes a projectile once you start to deorbit. Everything becomes a projectile if you are in a boat on a tossing sea in the middle of a storm. Do we have food available? Is everything locked away? Is the water available? Yeah, so incredible comparisons. And until I really started making those connections, it was all a little bit esoteric. It's like, hang on, this is a space flight. This is the domain of pure astronauts. But you know what? It's the domain of any human.
Not just in emergency, also in normal flight, you need to learn the skills, how to work with a spacesuit, like how to keep things organized, how to avoid things from flying around, how to quickly find locate where what you want. It's your everyday life.
I those are great analogies, Eric. I mean, listening to that, I have to say, just once again, I got excited, and we should get hats off to the training team on the space operations department, because listening to the four of you talk makes me feel like you're ready to go and that you've had the right experiences in preparation for this flight. So I want to turn the mic over to Jessica Jensen, or my dear friend JJ, as I call her, to have her talk about, you know, what does a mission like Fram2 enable, and like how do all these private missions come together, and then maybe ask some more fun and deep questions with the crew. JJ, you there?
Yep. No,
All right.
yeah, it's been so fun listening to this because I always love looking at the big picture. It's why I work at SpaceX, right? We want to make life multiplanetary, but how do we actually do that? And one of our goals is, right, to make space travel more like air travel. But it's so funny to hear, Chun and Eric talking about how, like, right now it's still this hardcore, basically polar expedition ski trip stuck in the middle of a blizzard. And, one of the things that this mission enables, along with, Inspiration 4, Polaris Dawn, even the Axiom missions, is each one of these missions is a small step towards making spaceflight more like easier air travel where anyone can fly. Eventually, you won't have to go through all of this crazy training. So I think it's like, I liked hearing all this and thinking about like, you guys are the pioneers in this. You have to fly, you have to go through all this crazy training, and then bring us back the feedback of how we make it easier, how we make it smoother for future passengers to fly. So I'm really excited for you guys to fly, see what's, absolutely incredible about this mission, seeing the Earth with no boundaries, seeing the Arctic and Antarctic in different ways. But then also just from a living in the spaceship perspective, what can we do different? And, how do we make it easier for just, everyday people to fly? Because that's really our goal, is to get as many people into space as possible. But yeah, I want to ask some fun questions actually to the crew. So maybe I'll start with you, Chun. What what is exciting you the most about being able to see the poles over and over again every day? Like, if you really thought about that, you're going to be, what is it, every hour and a half? Let's like North Pole, South Pole, North Pole, South Pole. Have you thought about, yeah, what does that mean to you?
I'm not a person usually easily gets excited, so I'm probably not the right person to answer this question. But you mentioned make life multiplanetary, so you can only think about how to go far, go to Mars and beyond, only after you can go to low Earth orbit comfortably and regularly. So it's like without a commercial flight flying, thousands of times per day, and now we're trying to make the access to low Earth orbit, uh, 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 like what we have now with aircrafts. So only we are at this level, we can think about much further beyond. Just like similar, maybe in the future when we comfortable have a city on Mars, we can think about how we could later push a boundary more, like go to another star. So we cannot think uh, too, so that's my point. So regarding to the training process, I think one thing gave me uh, the impression is I can't say it's a hard training or it's difficult, but I have feeling like the trainers of us, they are really friendly to us, uh, and also they do make change. For example, we have a fair response procedures, and initially the procedures tell us if there's a fare, and after fare the cabin uh, carbon monoxide as level more than 110 ppm, then we have to do an emergency deorbit. We have to make an early end of mission. But I raised a question to our trainer, saying like this level probably too low. And also I found the NASA paper, like their suggestions, and also make some calculation according my chemistry knowledge. And after a few months, when I come back, I saw they did change the procedure. The new value is more than 5 times higher than the previous value. So that gave me make me impressive. And maybe Yannicka has another point of view.
Hey, Chen, thanks for that. It's been exceptional to go from a career as a polar cinematographer, and I work in hazardous environments here on Earth, and have background with working both with legendary David Attenborough for wildlife, to jumping to rock concerts with Queen, being a virtual reality director for them, and now going into space primarily to shoot for immersive and 3D. And then I find myself in a role that SpaceX and Chun asks me to step up to become the vehicle commander, which is a role I accept with honor, but I didn't understand that the trainers would actually be educating me as an astronaut to be certified for spaceflight to fly Dragon, which was quite a humbling experience to go through. And as Chun explained, we've gone from nothing to being certified astronauts to fly, and I'm representing, or we are all representing, this privileged group of civilians who get to receive an astronaut education and to be able to go out on a trajectory, or I should actually call it the last frontier of unexplored territory in low Earth orbit, which Chun is designed together with SpaceX, going in an inclination of 90 degrees over the poles. Previously, I've actually worked as a payload specialist. This was also a commercial flight, but it was aviation flight where we broke the world record for the fastest polar circumnavigation over the North Pole and South Pole. And we actually launched from the shuttle landing facility at NASA Kennedy Space Center in 2019 to honor the Apollo 11 50th anniversary. And we were a crew of 8 of both pilots, astronauts, and cosmonauts. And it was an international flight. And now that we are going into a polar orbit in space, we're actually getting quite close to that record that we set for one more mission, one more orbit, which was at 46 hours. But now we are almost going from the North Pole to the South Pole in 46 minutes and not hours.
That's 30 times faster, not just 30 times faster, but also 30 times higher.
Which is mind-boggling. And as a vehicle commander, you have to learn how to talk to Dragon and how Dragon talks back to you. Echoing what Robea said earlier on in the opening, Dragon is a autonomous vehicle, and we need to understand how she talks to us. And Resilience, to me, she is a female, and she is going to have her own personality. And we are learning how to navigate in the systems. We are learning how to set her up to best way possible, operate autonomously. And we know that we have mission control with us at all times. And we have SpaceX with the smartest people I have ever met, helping us through this and showing that it's possible for civilians to go out on a space exploration. Robea, why don't...
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
No, go ahead. You can kick it over. I have some other fun questions if you guys want.
We're going to kick it over to Robea when it comes, because her background in robotics is quite applicable, and I thought she'd like to talk a little bit more about Dragon.
Absolutely.
Sure. I think the interesting question I often get is like, oh, is it robotic exploration of space or human exploration of space? But I think that is a false dilemma, because I think this mission is a really good example of how both like the strength of autonomous spacecraft combined with humans are still making up epic missions. And I think also that in the future we will see many more of these joint endeavors instead of, oh, it's either or, because you always have humans as the creative source of decision making still, right? Where we're not at yet with any robotics if we're thinking about um, any robotic missions to planets. But yeah, I mean, robots are epic at reducing the error margin and making everything safer. So I just think it's a perfect marriage there.
Yeah, totally agree. You guys have said thank you. It's been so informative, and I hope everyone listening is just loving everything you guys are talking about. Maybe I'll just ask a few questions and any of you can jump in and answer. I'm curious if any of you have ideas for things you're going to try in zero G.
Mm. Interesting. I mean, it's interesting because we have very limited space on board Dragon. You know, we see pictures of people doing somersaults and swiping baseballs and doing all kinds of crazy stuff on board the ISS where there's a little extra room. We're very limited on what we can do on board. And I think we're just going to be super excited to see what it's like to be in microgravity. It's the one thing that we can't train for. Of course, we can simulate some things, and we do that down on the ground with some of the exercise stuff that we're doing. But really, the only way to simulate it is to be on a parabolic flight, and really, that's only a duration of 15, 20 seconds or so. So it's a bit difficult for us to know exactly what it's going to feel like, but once we're up there. One of the fun things that I'm going to do is to release my little piggies. I'm taking some pigs into space, and for any Muppets people, you'll know the relevance there. But Pass the Pigs is a game that I played a lot with my kids. It's a tiny very small pigs and a little bit the size of dice, and we used to take that on our adventures, our hiking and ski adventures and kayaking trips. And we would play this game in the tent or in the cabin. So I wanted to honor that beautiful family tradition by taking those little pigs into space and trying to work out if there is any way to play this game in space where, of course, we don't have any gravity to tell us how the pigs land, like how dice land.
Oh, this is going to be
I
fun.
probably will test. I probably spend some time test my iPad, iPhone, how to change, rotate between landscape mode and portrait mode. So I heard some story.
I just can't wait for John's team when they get, and Kiko's team when they get the spacecraft back to be looking for little piggies, who've like
Yeah.
found their ways into little holes. You guys, you take 10 of them up and somehow you only wind up with 5. We'll have to find the rest.
Actually, we do have very strict rules about all of these kind of things, and I can only have one pig out at a time. I'm not sure how I'm going to
Oh,
work that into my game, or whether I've got a little bit of leeway there. But we're doing a bunch of things there that we actually have to be very careful about how we manage stuff on board. It's actually part of my role. I'm flippantly referred to as the Minister for the Interior by the trainers back at Hawthorne. So I have to really keep a close eye on where things are within Dragon at any given time. That things are put back in the same place because, of course, CG, center of gravity, is incredibly important. Certainly for the trajectory of Dragon on its orbits, but also for re-entry. So I've got to keep a very close tab on things.
excellent. I'm glad we have a minister for that. Yes, CG is very important for coming home. Let's see, maybe we'll have time for one more question. I also want to give John some time to give him a little more technical details about the mission, but I'm curious actually if any of you had any phobias or fears you've had to overcome during training or that you think you're going to have to deal with once you're up there.
I'll step in here. I don't have any phobias or fears, but we did have a extreme environment training, which was in Alaska, and I live in Svalbard in Longyearbyen, and it's so far north that we don't actually have any creepy crawlies like spiders and very few mosquitoes and no ants. But oh man, there were so many bugs when we were doing our survival training in Alaska, and it was soaking wet, and we just like, you go to bed wet, you wake up slightly dry, and then 2 seconds later, you're soaking wet again. And we were kayaking and definitely team bonding through that experience. That was probably when I met my biggest phobia, which are spiders. But hey, there should be no spiders in space, as far as I'm informed.
That's Kiko's job, all right, Kiko? No spiders in the capsule.
Got it. Heard.
All right, well, let's actually turn it over to John
Yeah.
Edwards. And yeah, John, if you want to give some updates and more info on the mission.
You there, Jedwards?
Here, can you hear
If you
me?
guys, yeah, if you guys don't know John, by the way, both John and Jess are like folklore at SpaceX. Jess is, I think you're 19 years, right?
Yep.
18,
Almost
19,
19.
19. That's right.
John's older,
That's right.
though.
And John's over 20. I'm measly 15, but John's been running Falcon forever. And is one of my favorite people at SpaceX. So Sir Jedwards, let's hear about the
Yeah,
mission.
wow, thanks, Kiko. Yeah, so I'm the VP of Falcon and Launch at SpaceX, basically in charge of all the engineering for Falcon and Dragon and also sort of all the programmatic functions. So that's kind of what I do. Kiko said I've been here a long time. I think I'll actually have my 21-year anniversary while the cruise, Fram2 cruise in space. So that's exciting. But anyway, I thought I would maybe give the audience kind of highlight some of the really cool, unique things about this mission. And that's really why. I mean, I am really excited about this mission. Super stoked. This mission is not a cookie cutter. Uh, Most of our Dragon missions, go to the ISS, right? We've done that a number of times, and that flies out of Florida. When we launch those missions, they fly out of Florida and they kind of go northeast to a 51.6-degree inclination. And what inclination is, for those who don't know, inclination is the angle of the orbit relative to the equator. So if you had a 0-degree inclination orbit, you're basically right over the equator. If you go to 90 degrees, you're over the poles. And surprisingly, no one's ever done that. No one's ever flown astronauts over the poles before. The closest, interestingly enough, the closest anyone's. I actually didn't believe this when I first heard about it. Like, no way, no one's ever flown over the poles before. And I did a little research, and sure enough, like nobody's done that, and really nobody's even come that close. Interestingly, the closest anyone's ever come was Yuri Gagarin and some of those really early Soviet cosmonauts during the Vostok program in the early 60s, and they flew to about 65 degrees. So that's quite a bit different than what the Fram2 crew will be doing next week. So that's like for sure one of you've heard a lot about that so far today. And I'm gonna go. Maybe I can focus on why like that's so challenging. Well, one of the things interestingly about the trajectory itself is we're going to fly out of 39A in Florida and go pretty much straight south. In fact, the flight path is going to go over Florida, close to like if you were in Miami and you looked straight up, at the right time, you would see the rocket and the crew flying right overhead. The what we call the instantaneous impact points, which is where if we cut power, where it would land, that will stay offshore. So it's totally safe to do this. Um, but it will be flying over Florida and over Cuba and Panama and just to the west of Peru and Ecuador. So what's so challenging about that? Well, uh, there's a number of things. One of which is just launch availability. We have to factor in sort of the winds. Like if they're blowing towards shore, we got to be careful because in the very low likelihood event that we have a Dragon escape occur, we got to make sure that the crew and the capsule are going to splash down safely in the ocean. So that sort of limits us to some extent in terms of like which way the wind's blowing. So that's one challenge. The other sort of obvious one is we have to protect for Dragon escape, even though there's a very very low likelihood of that happening. But to be safe, we got to make sure that if that does happen, that we're not going to the crew's not going to land on land in Cuba or Panama. So we had to sort of redo some of the engineering in software so that if that did happen, Dragon, the Super Dracos would either do a like a posigrade or a retrograde sort of thing to make sure that the capsule splashes down safely in the water. So that's definitely one of the challenges. Um, Another one that's interesting. We usually, if we do a Dragon mission, we will either boost back. The booster will either fly back to the landing site on land, or we'll land on a drone ship way down range. In this case, we need to land sort of in international waters, just outside of the Bahamian territory. So we have to do a partial boost back. We've done these before, but they're pretty rare. So we do basically a short boost back burn, and then we land on a drone ship. So that was another sort of unique engineering challenge. Um,
It is, John, just to say, it is worth noting we were originally planning on landing in the Bahamian waters, but we wanted to do some more environmental studies in this region before we actually committed to that, which is why we ended up making this engineering change. And that was in collaboration with the Bahamas, especially as we work on the Exuma landings, and future work with the island
yeah,
country.
it also just gives us a lot more sort of schedule certainty because we don't have, there's just less sort of organizations, regulatory organizations that we have to negotiate with. So, but we've done this before, and we've done all our homework, so we're ready to do it. So the trajectory is really unique. Flying over the poles, be super cool. First time that's ever happened. Another thing that's new for a crew Dragon mission is we'll be splashing down the West Coast. Um, we used to do that for Dragon up until about 2019. But then for crew launches, when those started in around 2019, we started splashing down in around Florida. So this will be the first time astronauts are splashing down the West Coast. Why are we doing that? Well, for every Dragon mission, we fly what we call the trunk, which is the structure just aft of Dragon. The trunk is really important. That's where our solar panels are, and that's what generates all our power. There's also radiators in the trunk that are part of the environmental control system that keep Dragon either warm or cool, the right temperature, really. Also, we use the trunk to store cargo. Sometimes it won't be for Fram2 next week, but for say cargo missions to the space station, it gives us a lot of volume to store unpressurized cargo. So it's a really important part of Dragon, but obviously we can't re-enter. We don't want to re-enter with a trunk attached. So typically, up until now, what we've done is just before we do the deorbit burn and bring the crew or the capsule back, we will jettison the trunk, and then we will do a deorbit burn and bring the capsule home. Um, that leaves the trunk in orbit, and it will re-enter randomly. It's very hard to predict exactly where or when the trunk will re-enter. Um, we've been doing that, for years, and in some cases, it's very rare, but in some cases, the trunk will come down on land. So there's a very, very low likelihood anyone would ever get hurt. It's we've done the math, and it's a very, very low number, but it's not zero. And we really want it to be zero. And we can make it zero. And so we we figured out how to do that and to do it safely. And essentially what we'll do is we will do the deorbit burn with the trunk attached and then jettison the trunk. And that guarantees that it's going to come in a controlled way. We know exactly where it's gonna, or pretty much exactly where it's gonna come in. Um, so the so that is really what's driving us to this West Coast recovery, so that we can guarantee zero chance of anybody getting hurt or damage to property. Um, splashing down the West Coast, something we've done before. there's some unique challenges there. Weather typically is better on the West Coast than it is on the East Coast, which I think you heard at the beginning of this talk. Weather can be an issue for launch availability because we've got, not only do we need the weather over the pad and the weather at the landing location for the booster, and all the weather along what we call the ascent corridor, to be good, but we also need to look, 3 or 4 days into the future and make sure weather is going to be okay at the splashdown location, in this case on the West Coast. So it's a bit more of a challenge, but in general, ground winds, or the winds close to the ocean, are really what we're looking at. And winds on the West Coast are generally better. The sort of the only sort of like concerning thing is the marine layer. Like, anybody that lives in Southern California knows about the marine layer. Especially in the summertime, the marine layer comes in like every day. Um, that's not a problem because they're still relatively high altitude. It's not like fog. It's just clouds. That This won't be a problem for recovering the crew and the capsule, but could be a problem for helicopters. So that is like kind of the real only concerning thing about a West Coast recovery. But the crew, the launch team, Kiko's team, has spent like a ton of time training and getting ready for this, and we will be ready next week. The last thing I wanted to mention, one more really cool thing about this mission: we're putting a Starlink laser terminal in the trunk, which can connect to the Starlink network and provide super high speed internet to the crew. Um, Typically, we use a, sort of a legacy system called TDRS. This is a NASA system that allows Dragon to talk to the ground when we're not over a ground station. It's what we've been using up till now for the most part, but it's extremely slow. It's like, I'm not sure if any of you had modems growing up, but it's like 32 kilobits per second. Like, that's how fast. That's the bandwidth of TDRS. With a Starlink terminal, laser terminal in the trunk, we can theoretically achieve speeds up to 100 or more gigabits per second. And for Fram, we're expecting around 1 gigabits per second, which is more than 10,000 times the bandwidth. So um, that this is the second time we've flown this. Something we want to develop and make available for future Dragon missions and space stations and that kind of thing. So that is also will be a very cool thing to see in operation. So there's many more things that could go on and on, but I think I'm probably out of time here. So I'll pass it back to you, Kiko.
Sounds like a commercial for Starlink. Starlink, internet made by humans for humans on Earth and in space. Okay, so we do want to do some Q&A. I think we've gone over the 6:30 time, but I think we could spend 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm just going to give everyone 30 seconds here to join into the queue. And then I'll go ahead and call out a name as we open it up. Okay. Will Robinson Smith, we're going to have you go first. I'm going to turn you on right now. Okay.
Hi, I can hear you, Kiko. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Great. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us today. Question for John. Can you go into a little bit more detail about the various abort and rescue scenarios that are available for this mission, given the unique trajectory? And quickly to Kiko, given the unique dynamics of this mission, not talking about vehicle availability, but from a technical standpoint, is this something that you could have done before now, or are you leveraging some of the learning from previous Dragon missions to make this particular mission possible? Thanks.
They're both great questions. Jedward, do you want to try to answer the first one?
Yeah. So like I was trying to explain how, if we do get into a Dragon abort scenario, that Dragon's programmed to basically dodge Florida, Cuba, Panama, Peru, and land in the water. So from that perspective, it's really no different um, than other scenarios. I mean, they'll be in the water, and we'll go get them. If for places that are a little bit further away, we'll have to rely on the Coast Guard, or military assets to get there as fast as possible. But that's not really any different than other Dragon crew missions.
And then I think to answer the second question, the way I think about it is let's say we hadn't had Inspiration 4 and Polaris Dawn. I think there are some capabilities we're building upon that, most notably the cupola. Right. So had we not had those missions, we would have had to go design and develop a cupola. So by default, having it be a follow-on to that has allowed us to not necessarily have to redo or renew that development. We knew how to go integrate that piece of hardware and how to put it into work. I think we could have flown this mission earlier had the mission design come. But as Chun said, this was Jared inspired him, right? Inspiration 4 was one of the things that got him excited and got him thinking about doing this. And we like to stack new things on off of capabilities we built before. And this mission's kind of similar to Inspiration 4 in the sense that it's a 3-day free flyer, except obviously flying over the poles, with new capabilities like Starlink, which it's kind of like this hybrid between the previous two free flyers we've flown. And then I think the other thing is, from a crew training perspective, we've really started to refine how do we train for folks that have no traditional background in spaceflight to get ready for a mission. On both Inspiration 4 and Polaris Dawn, Jared Isaacman and then specifically on Polaris on the second flight, he had Kid on with him. He's an avid aviator, someone that flies fighter pilots, extreme familiarity with pulling G's and doing things that are similar to space flight. But otherwise, we're normal people, right? And I think the four of the crew members that we got on Fram are absolutely extraordinary individuals. But we figured out how do we train these extraordinary individuals to hop in a capsule, you know, get flung at 17,500 miles per hour under 1 million pounds of propellant and be calm about it. And I think we sort of built upon things we've done in the past in that sense. All right. Thank you. John Kraus, I think we'll let you in to ask the next question.
Hey, com check, guys.
Got you.
Cool, cool. Well, to the crew, thank you guys for doing this during quarantine. I know you're busy and excited, so thanks for spending some time with us. Um, so obviously you're going to be the first crew to fly over the poles, but as Jedward said, there's 25 degrees of unexplored region from space because the prior record was like 65 degrees. Is there anywhere other than the poles in that sort of higher latitude region that you're particularly excited to see and photograph? And if not there specifically, where just other than the poles are you excited to see? Hometown, college town, anything like that?
Hey there, John. This is Yannicka. So I'll jump in here. Obviously, living on the archipelago Svalbard, I'm very excited about seeing my hometown, Longyearbyen, from space because we actually live so far north that like that traditional globe that you have in the classroom. We're so far north that that brass thing that holds the globe in place actually covers our island, and you can't even see our island even on a globe in a classroom. So I'm very excited about seeing us from space. And even if you use something like Google Maps, you have to sort of like zoom out and then like, yes, under that either hotels or coffee sign, that's where I live. So it's always very difficult to show people which island I live on because we're so far north. How about you?
That's also the initial reason when I proposed this mission to SpaceX. I was in Longyearbyen as well, so I told people from SpaceX, it's be said to fly into space, but you cannot see where you live.
Yeah, can I jump in
Other
here?
than that, I'm also interested in Antarctica, different research stations, such the largest one, McMurdo, and previously I was also trying to make some observation at Amundsen Scott's South Pole Station, but unfortunately missed the uh, spring equinox. So we'll still try to see if there anything uh, can be seen in the dark. But I'll make a map of all the research stations, the infrastructures in Antarctica, see what we can actually see from orbit.
Yeah, that was going to be my point too, Eric, here again, that would have been fantastic to see the South Pole Station. I think on the light side of the equinox, there would have been a reasonable chance that we would have seen the shadows, particularly very close to the equinox, those shadows cast by the South Pole buildings, South Pole Station buildings. There's a reasonable chance we could have seen those, certainly with the binoculars that we carry on board. But now we're on the dark side of the equinox. We don't really have that opportunity. I did actually apply to the National Science Foundation to see if they could light the station up with everything that they've got so that we could have the opportunity to see it, but that wasn't granted. But there are other, stations in Antarctica that we'll be observing and hoping to see. Certainly my hometown area in country Victoria. It would be great to see if we can see part of that. But just seeing the entire globe between us. I mean, it's interesting because we're orbiting over the North and South poles. The Earth is slowly rotating underneath us. So we've got the opportunity. We will fly over every part of Earth. But of course, we need to sleep. There'll be clouds. There'll be darkness. So there's a reasonable chance that we won't get to see all of Earth, even though we fly over it.
Yeah, and I think to build on that, I'm obviously seeing out the window is going to be epic. I'm also very looking forward to the radio aspect of it though, because with this, as Eric said, it's the first time that you actually cover all of Earth's regions actually, and we have a fun little radio competition where people had to form international teams all around the globe. And I'm also super excited that we have some institutions like in the Canadian Arctic, for example, joining that previously never really had the chance to, for example, have a contact with the ISS because that's quite low on the horizon for them. So yeah, I think I'm looking forward to connecting with all of these people on the ground as we're flying over them and having this direct link with them.
And also Antarctica is alive, and the Earth is alive. So you cannot see from a Google Earth, from any maps, you cannot see where those icebergs are, where the ice caps stop, and mm, I think yes, you can order satellite images from online, but they do not answer this question as well because it's hard to get overview of what Antarctica looks like. My uh, I suspect that when we fly up above Antarctica, maybe the Antarctica Peninsula probably one of the most recognizable feature. But other than that, we probably even couldn't recognize what's the shape of a continental because those ice caps they reshape the shoreline of the entire continental. So I'm curious to find out what's those places really look like in the real. So uh, that's I'm looking forward.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question because we got to let the crew go. So Stephen Clark, you are up. We do a comm check.
Comm check, Stephen Clark here.
Yes, we got you.
Great. Thanks for taking the time to do this so close to launch. Um, I guess for Chun, can you kind of go back and you said you were inspired by Jared Isaacman's missions. Um, what I guess it was your idea. What inspired you to want to go over the poles? Were you aware when you thought of this that no mission had gone over the poles before, or was it just something you wanted to do and maybe you thought it had been done before? And secondly, maybe for Jedward's, just a curiosity, really, what's driving the launch time on Monday night? I think 9:46 or 9:47. Is that lighting of timing the orbit so they have the best possible lighting over the poles, or is it something different? Thanks.
I love
I'll
it.
answer the first two questions. Sorry, John.
No, go ahead.
So, yeah. So, Jared spent a effort trying to fly as high as possible because of his pilot background. But here, this mission, we have a group of polar explorers. We'll do this from a explorer's perspective. So, and also, I don't want to repeat. It's meaningless to repeat the same mission profile again and again. I don't think I have less interested to fly to IS, and because every mission, previous missions, to fly to the ISS again, again, and again. So, uh, if we do not challenge Jared, if we do not repeat the previous mission, where else we can go, given our current hardware we have in 2025? So what Dragon can do is to fly into a low Earth orbit, and there's a big bunch of area in low Earth orbit haven't been explored, given like everyone lean to fly up to Moon, Mars, beyond, but few people look back at our on Earth, and there's a big bunch of area, the polar area, haven't been explored. And if I make another mission, if I propose another mission, I think that's the very interesting spot of the Earth, and we can go and we can find something new out of there.
Yeah. And I'll try to answer your second part of your question. First of all, I love it that you called me Jedwards. Not sure if anybody outside SpaceX knows that's my nickname, but anyway, so the T zeros, we have 4 T zeros between, I think it's 9:46 p.m. and 2:26 a.m. And the main driver for that is actually splashdown time, like 3.5 days later. We really want to splash down in the morning. And the reason for that is the diurnal weather patterns. Like we get better, more favorable wind conditions sort of in the morning time frame. When the West Coast recovery sites will be available. So that's the main thing.
All right. That was awesome. Huge shout out to the legends, John Edwards and Jessica Jensen, Jedwards and JJ, and for the crew. It's truly an honor, speaking for the entire SpaceX team, to have you guys on the vehicle and to fly this mission. Chun, Rebea, Jonica, and Eric, Godspeed, and we'll see you on the other side. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you,
listening.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.